Do you seriously think your kind has any place in a billion-dollar firm like this? Look at this pathetic excuse for a resume. And look at you, people with your background, coming from those filthy neighborhoods with your skin color, belong in the service elevator, not my boardroom. Clean up this trash and get out of my sight before I call security. You are probably wondering how a young, brilliant woman ended up standing in the middle of a pristine corporate office, picking up the shredded pieces of her own resume while a millionaire in a custom Italian suit laughs at her. It looks like the ultimate defeat, doesn't it? It looks like just another day where the elite crushed the underdog without a second thought. But you see, that man has absolutely no idea who he is actually talking to. He doesn't know that the woman standing in front of him with her head bowed isn't some desperate job seeker. He doesn't know that every single vile, racist word coming out of his mouth is currently being live-streamed directly to a federal server. Because Maya isn't just an applicant, she is an elite undercover investigator for the Department of Labor, and today, she is bringing hell straight to his doorstep. Let us rewind to see how this beautiful trap was set. Growing up on the south side of Chicago, Maya learned early on that the world was not built fairly. She watched her parents work 3 jobs just to keep the lights on, only to be passed over for promotions by people who had less talent but way more connections. She saw the exhaustion in her mother's eyes when she was told she didn't have the right look for a front desk position. Instead of letting that bitterness consume her, Maya turned it into a weapon. She studied late into the night under flickering streetlights. She memorized labor laws while other kids were out playing. She clawed her way through law school on full scholarships, fueled by a burning desire to dismantle the very systems that kept her people down. She possessed that unstoppable, relentless energy, the kind of person who says she will do something and actually gets it done. Maya didn't just want a seat at the table. She wanted to flip the whole damn table over. When she finally earned her badge as a federal auditor, she made a promise to herself. She would be the ghost in the machine. She would be the shadow that arrogant executives never saw coming, until it was entirely too late. If you respect that grind and you know the power of resilience, drop Black Excellence in the comments right now to show some love for Maya. Seriously, pause the video and type Black Excellence because what she is about to pull off is absolutely legendary. For the past 6 months, the Department of Labor had been receiving anonymous tips about a prestigious venture capital firm downtown. The complaints were completely horrifying. Qualified minorities were being routinely humiliated during interviews. Women were being asked illegal questions about their family plans, and then immediately shown the door. The man running the show was Richard Sterling. Richard was the director of human resources, but he acted like a king ruling over a peasant village. He was a man born on third base who convinced himself he hit a triple. He prided himself on keeping the company pure. Richard wasn't just a snob. He was a gatekeeper for the elite. Convinced he was doing God's work by keeping the corporate bloodline clean, he openly bragged at country clubs about his aggressive filtering tactics. He had fired women for getting pregnant, claiming they lacked commitment to the firm. He had thrown out applications from ethnic names without even reading past the contact information, and the corporate executives turned a blind eye. Because Richard kept their workforce desperate, compliant, and cheap, but the victims were always too terrified to go on the record. They were just ordinary people up against a multi-billion-dollar giant. They had no proof, no money for expensive lawyers, and no voice. That is exactly why Maya was assigned to the case. She created a bulletproof fake identity. She built a resume that was deliberately designed to trigger Richard's elitist prejudices. She walked into that towering glass skyscraper wearing a cheap, off-the-rack suit that she bought specifically for this mission. She adjusted the thick-rimmed glasses on her face, making sure the microscopic high-definition camera hidden in the frame was perfectly aligned. The waiting room was a masterclass in psychological intimidation. Every single detail in this room was designed to make you feel small. The oversized chairs that made your feet dangle off the floor, the blinding white lights that felt exactly like an interrogation room. It was a psychological meat grinder. Everything was made of cold marble and sharp glass. The air smelled of expensive cologne and pure fear. 4 other candidates were sitting on the edge of their plush leather seats, sweating straight through their shirts. Maya sat quietly in the corner, playing the role of the nervous, intimidated girl from the wrong side of the tracks. The receptionist sneered at her the moment she walked in, handing her a clipboard without even making eye contact. Maya noticed a young Hispanic man walk out of Richard's office. His face was completely drained of color. His hands were shaking so violently that he dropped his briefcase twice before even reaching the elevator. He looked completely broken. Maya felt a familiar heat rising in her chest. It was the same exact anger she felt when she was a little girl watching her parents get humiliated. But she took a deep breath, letting the anger crystallize into pure, cold focus. She knew the playbook because she had spent her entire life watching men like Richard. As she waited, she mentally reviewed the federal statutes. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, the Equal Pay Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act. Richard had violated all of them. But today, she was specifically here for the racial discrimination complaints. She knew she had to let Richard hang himself with his own words. She had to play the perfect victim. Suddenly, the heavy oak door swung open. Richard stepped out, casually checking a gold Rolex that cost more than Maya's childhood home. He didn't greet the room. He didn't smile. He just looked at his list, sighed in profound annoyance, and called out her fake name. Maya. In my office. Now, he didn't even wait to see if she was following. He just turned around and walked straight back into his den. Maya stood up, her heart beating a steady rhythm of pure justice. She touched the frame of her glasses one last time. The little red light on the inside blinked once, confirming the uplink to the federal servers was live. The trap was set. The bait was walking right into the jaws of the beast, and the beast had absolutely no idea it was about to be slaughtered. If you are ready to see this arrogant millionaire get entirely dismantled piece by piece, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. We bring you the most satisfying karma stories every single week, and trust me, you do not want to miss how this ends. Go ahead, subscribe, and let us walk into the tiger's den. Richard's office was a monument to his own massive ego. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city like he personally owned it. The walls were lined with expensive degrees and meaningless awards that he probably paid for. Maya walked in, keeping her shoulders slumped, her eyes glued to the expensive Persian rug. The temperature in the room felt artificially cold, designed to keep people awake and incredibly uncomfortable. Have a seat. He didn't even look up from his phone when he said it. His fingers were frantically typing an email, completely ignoring the human being sitting across from him. Maya sat down on the edge of the leather chair, clutching her cheap purse like it was a life preserver in a violent storm. She could hear the faint ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner, counting down the seconds to Richard's inevitable downfall. Richard finally tossed his phone onto the desk and leaned back, steepling his fingers together. He stared at her for a long, highly uncomfortable moment, dissecting her appearance with absolute disgust. He looked at the slight fraying on the collar of her jacket. He noticed the cheap scuff marks on her sensible heels. Let us get right to the point, Maya. I do not like wasting my valuable time. My firm is the apex predator of the financial world. We manage billions of dollars for people who own private islands. Our clients expect a certain high-level pedigree. They expect to see faces that reflect absolute success, generational wealth, and cultural alignment. He paused, letting the racist implication hang heavy in the sterile corporate air. Looking at your resume, I see you went to a public state school. I see you live on the south side of the city. Tell me, Maya, how exactly do you expect to fit in here? Do you even own a pair of shoes that didn't come from a clearance discount bin? Maya forced her voice to tremble, playing the part of the desperate applicant flawlessly. I am a very hard worker, Mr. Sterling. I learn fast, and I am willing to put in whatever grueling hours the firm requires. Richard let out a short, barking laugh that echoed sharply off the glass walls. Hard work? Everyone works hard, sweetheart. But this is not a charity, and we do not run a diversity program just to make people like you feel included in high society. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the polished mahogany desk, lowering his voice into a menacing, predatory whisper. Let me ask you a highly practical question. You are a young woman from a certain demographic. Are you planning on popping out 3 or 4 kids in the next few years? Because I will not invest 6 months of expensive training into someone who is just going to abandon her desk to collect welfare checks or take extended maternity leave. Maya's blood boiled violently beneath her skin, but her face remained a masterclass mask of terrified submission. That specific question was a direct, undeniable violation of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission guidelines. It was a blatant federal offense, and Richard knew it perfectly well. He just didn't care, because he genuinely thought the rules only applied to poor people. "No, sir. I am completely focused on my career," Maya stammered, nervously adjusting her thick-rimmed glasses. The tiny, military-grade camera, hidden directly inside the frame, captured every single word, every arrogant smirk. It was streaming flawlessly to a team of heavily armed federal agents sitting in a surveillance van 3 blocks away, recording the entire criminal interaction on secure government servers. "Good," Richard sneered, tossing her resume back onto the desk like it was physically contaminated. "Because frankly, women in your community have a terrible, documented track record with professional commitment. We need people who naturally belong in this high-stakes world. We need pure, unadulterated talent, not affirmative action quotas trying to drag their ghetto dirt into my pristine corporate hallways." "Stop right there. Can we just pause the video for a quick second? I need to ask you guys something directly. Could you have kept your mouth shut if some entitled, snobby billionaire looked you dead in the eye and insulted your family, your background, and your entire community like that? Because I honestly would have lost my absolute mind right then and there. If you are feeling that exact same burning rage right now, go down to the comments and type Black Excellence to stand as a massive shield for Maya. Let us drown out his disgusting racism with absolute power. And while you are down there, hit that subscribe button to join our squad. We expose corrupt, wealthy bullies like Richard every single day, and we need you on the front lines with us. Let us get back to the trap." Maya didn't break character for a fraction of a second. She needed him to dig his grave so deep that absolutely no corporate lawyer on earth could ever pull him out. "So, what exactly are the day-to-day requirements for this position?" she asked quietly, looking at him through the lenses. Richard stood up, walking over to the massive window with his hands clasped firmly behind his back, looking down at the city traffic below like they were mere insects. "The requirements are simple. You do whatever I tell you to do, whenever I tell you to do it, without ever asking stupid questions. But let us be completely honest with each other, Maya. You are not going to get this job. You are never going to get this job." Maya blinked, acting utterly crushed by the sudden revelation. "Then why did you bring me in for an interview today?" Richard turned around, his eyes gleaming with a sick, sadistic pleasure. "Because corporate human resources mandated that I interview at least 3 minority candidates this quarter to avoid a discrimination lawsuit from the state. You are just a legal checkbox to me, Maya. A tedious, annoying little administrative chore. I brought you in so I could look at you in person, verify that my instincts were completely right, and show you exactly where you belong in the social food chain, which is right at the absolute bottom." He walked purposefully back to his desk, grabbing her resume with 2 fingers like it was garbage. "Do you seriously think your kind has any place in a billion-dollar firm like this? Look at this pathetic excuse for a resume. And look at you, people with your background, coming from those filthy neighborhoods with your skin color, belong in the service elevator, not my executive boardroom." He gripped the edges of the paper tightly. "Clean up this trash and get out of my sight, before I call security to physically remove you from my building." With a violent, dramatic yank, he ripped her resume perfectly in half. He didn't just drop it in the trash can, he threw the torn pieces right at Maya's face, letting them flutter to the floor around her cheap shoes. This was the climax. This was the exact second that Richard Sterling permanently cemented his own absolute destruction. He stood there, chest puffed out in a tailored suit, waiting for her to cry. He was waiting for her to scramble on her hands and knees to pick up the paper, defeated, humiliated, and utterly broken. But Maya didn't cry. Maya didn't shake. Instead, a slow, freezing smile spread across her beautiful face. Richard stood there, his chest puffed out in his tailored suit, practically vibrating with arrogant triumph. He was waiting for the tears. He wanted the absolute, sickening satisfaction of watching this young woman break down, scramble on her hands and knees to pick up the shredded paper, and leave his office utterly defeated. He had done this a dozen times before, and it always ended the exact same way. "I said, pick it up," Richard barked, stepping closer, his expensive cologne suddenly smelling like pure poison. "Clean up your garbage before I have my security team drag you out of here by your cheap hair." Maya looked down at the torn pieces of her fake resume scattered across the $10,000 Persian rug. She didn't move a single muscle toward the floor. Instead, She slowly stood up. The trembling, terrified posture she had been holding for the last 20 minutes completely vanished in a fraction of a second. Her shoulders squared, her spine straightened. Suddenly, the intimidated, desperate girl from the South Side was gone, replaced by a stone-cold, highly trained federal predator. She looked Richard dead in the eyes, and for the very first time in his entirely privileged, sheltered life, he felt a sudden, inexplicable chill run down his spine. "You know, Richard," Maya said, her voice dropping the nervous stutter entirely. It was now smooth, authoritative, and dangerously calm. "You are absolutely right about one thing." She reached up and slowly pulled the thick-rimmed glasses off her face, folding them neatly. "I am definitely not going to get this job." Richard frowned, genuinely confused by the sudden, drastic shift in her demeanor. "What is wrong with you? Are you deaf?" "I told you to get out." Maya reached inside her cheap, off-the-rack jacket. Richard flinched slightly, stepping back, but she didn't pull out a weapon. She pulled out a sleek, black leather wallet. With a crisp, satisfying flick of her wrist, she flipped it open and slammed it down onto the polished mahogany desk, right next to his ridiculous gold nameplate. The heavy, solid silver star of the United States Department of Labor caught the bright sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "I am not getting this job," Maya repeated, leaning directly into his personal space. "Because I already have one. My name is Special Agent Maya Brooks, and I am officially shutting this entire firm down." Richard stared blankly at the badge. His brain simply refused to process the information. It was like his reality had just hit a brick wall at 100 miles an hour. "What? What is this? Is this some kind of sick joke?" he stammered. The color drained from his perfectly tanned face so fast he looked physically ill. "No joke, Richard. That little interview we just had? The part where you explicitly asked about my reproductive plans? The part where you proudly stated you filter out minorities to keep your corporate bloodline pure?" Maya tapped the frame of her glasses sitting on the desk. "Every single word of that was broadcast live to a federal grand jury. You just gave the United States government a flawless, high-definition confession." Richard stumbled backward, his knees hitting the heavy leather chair. "You can't do this. Do you know who I am? Do you know who my clients are?" "I do," Maya smiled coldly. "And they are going to be absolutely thrilled to find out their billions are currently tied up in a massive federal discrimination and racketeering lawsuit." Before Richard could even reach for his phone to call his expensive corporate lawyers, the heavy oak doors of his office burst open. Remember those 4 nervous candidates sweating out in the waiting room? Yeah, they weren't candidates. They walked into the office, perfectly synchronized, shrugging off their oversized blazers to reveal black tactical vests with the letters FBI and DOL printed in bright yellow across their chests. The terrified Hispanic guy who had supposedly just bombed his interview a few minutes earlier walked right up to Richard, holding a pair of heavy steel handcuffs. "Mr. Sterling," the agent said with a massive, satisfied grin, "you have the right to remain silent. And honestly, I strongly suggest you use it, because you really suck at talking." It was absolute, beautiful poetry. Within seconds, the entire corporate floor descended into absolute chaos. Dozens of federal agents poured out of the elevators, carrying heavy plastic bins and server racks. They slapped federal seizure notices onto the glass doors. They unplugged computers, while arrogant executives screamed, panicked, and frantically demanded to speak to their lawyers. But nobody was screaming louder than Richard. As they marched him out of his glass cage, his hands securely zip-tied tight behind his back, the entire office watched. All the administrative assistants, the janitorial staff, the marginalized workers he had treated like absolute garbage for years, stopped what they were doing to watch the king fall. He looked utterly pathetic. His custom Italian suit was bunched up awkwardly around his shoulders. He was sweating profusely, his face red and puffy, as he desperately tried to hide his face from the smartphones that were suddenly recording his walk of shame. Maya stood quietly by the elevator bank, watching the spectacle with pure satisfaction. As Richard was being shoved into the elevator, he locked eyes with her one last time. He opened his mouth to say something, to throw one last desperate insult, but nothing came out. He was completely, utterly broken. Maya just gave him a small, polite wave as the heavy metal doors slid shut, sealing his fate forever. Now, Listen to me, because I need to stop and ask you a very serious question. I want you to really think about this and be totally honest with yourself. If you were one of the regular employees in that office, and you saw Richard ripping up resumes and publicly humiliating people of color for months, would you have risked your own comfortable salary to secretly report him? Or would you have just kept your head down, collected your paycheck, and pretended you didn't see anything because the abuse wasn't happening to you? It is a tough, uncomfortable question, isn't it? A lot of people talk a big game about justice on the internet, but when their own rent money is on the line, they suddenly go quiet and let the bullies win. Let me know exactly what you would do down in the comments. Would you speak up, or would you look away? And while you are down there, I want to see a massive wave of black excellence to celebrate Maya's ultimate victory. She didn't just beat the corrupt system, she completely dismantled the man who thought he owned it. If you live for these moments of absolute, undeniable karma, if you love seeing the arrogant elite get ripped off their pedestals and get exactly what they deserve, you need to subscribe to the channel right now. We expose these toxic bullies every single week, and you belong right here with us. Make sure you hit that bell icon too, because our next story is even crazier. Next time, we are looking at a billionaire CEO who tried to steal a brilliant patent from his lowest paid intern, only to find out that the intern's father is the most ruthless patent judge in the entire state. You absolutely do not want to miss that beautiful disaster. Hit subscribe. Drop that black excellence in the comments. And remember, karma always collects its debts.